And then he looks at his friend and basically says, wow, thanks for the masterclass on how to be absolutely useless. No music, no intro, just straight up fire. Imagine you're at your absolute lowest. You've lost everything, your health is gone, your family is gone, and your best friend decides that this is the perfect moment to give you a lecture on why you're a maggot.
Okay, wait, John. You are jumping right into the deep end. Welcome back to the Deeper Dive community, everyone. I'm Stephanie, and that high energy guy who is already fired up is my husband, John. We're tackling the Book of Job today, specifically chapters 26 through 29. And John, you're not wrong. Job is officially over it in chapter 26.
He is so over it, Steph. We are at the tail end of the third cycle of speeches. The friends have basically run out of things to say. Bildad just gave this tiny 6-verse speech. It's like he was trying to meet a word count but realized he had nothing left. And he basically just said, God is big, man is a worm. And Job's response is the ultimate slow clap.
It's so interesting because Job doesn't just get angry. He gets spicy. I mean, look at how he starts chapter 26. He asks Bildad, how you have helped him who is without power, how you have saved the arm that has no strength. It's heavy irony, isn't it?
Oh, it's dripping with sarcasm. It's like your internet goes out, you call tech support, and they spend 40 minutes explaining what a router is without actually fixing the connection. Job is saying, wow, Bildad, your sound advice has really turned my whole life around. I was feeling weak, but now that you've called me a maggot, I feel like a superhero. He's pointing out that Bildad's wisdom has zero practical value for someone in pain.
It's a modern mirror for sure. How many times do we give people theological answers when what they really need is a sandwich or a shoulder to cry on? But then Job does something really cool. He shifts from mocking Bildad to actually showing him what a real description of God's majesty looks like. It's like he's saying, if you want to talk about how big God is, let me show you how it's done.
Yes. And he starts in the basement, literally. In verse 5, he says, the dead tremble, those under the waters. Let's do a plain English translation here. The Hebrew word is Rephaim. Think of them as the shades or the powerful people of the past who are now in the realm of the dead. Job is saying that God's authority isn't just over the guys in suits at the city gate. It goes all the way down into the deepest, darkest parts of the underworld.
And he uses that word Abaddon. I've heard that in movies, but what does it actually mean in this context?
Abaddon just means destruction or the beyond. It's a synonym for Sheol, the grave. Job says Sheol is naked before God. There's no privacy from God's power. Even the places we fear the most, the unknown of death, are completely visible to him.
That is actually really comforting if you think about it. Nothing is lost to God. But then he looks up at the sky. Verse 7 is the one that always blows my mind. He stretches out the north over empty space and hangs the earth on nothing. John, this was written thousands of years ago. How did they have the concept of the earth hanging on nothing?
Right. It's a modern mirror to a satellite view of Earth. Some scholars think the north refers to the northern stars or even a mythological mountain. But the imagery of the world just floating in the void is way ahead of its time. It reminds us that God doesn't need pillars or a shelf to hold the world up. He holds the universe together by his word alone.
I can barely keep my living room organized, and he's holding the planet in place over empty space. That's a plain English version of sovereignty. But wait, Job mentions a fleeing serpent and someone named Rahab in verse 12. We're not talking about the woman from Jericho who helped the spies, right?
No, definitely not her. This is the deeper dive part. In ancient Near Eastern myths, people told stories about gods fighting sea monsters to create the world. Rahab was a name for one of those chaos monsters. Job is taking those old legends and saying, listen, those stories about dragons? My God is the one who actually stilled the sea and shattered the chaos. He's calling God the ultimate chaos tamer.
So, whether it's the underworld, the stars, the weather, or even the monsters of life, God has the final word. But then Job ends chapter 26 with this line. Indeed, these are the mere edges of his ways. How small a whisper we hear of him.
A whisper. Think about that, Steph. All of creation, the galaxies, the mountain ranges, the deep oceans. That's just God clearing his throat. If that's the whisper, what on earth does the thunder of his power sound like? Job is telling his friends, you guys are trying to put God in a box, but you haven't even seen the lid yet.
That leads us right into chapter 27, and this is where the legal drama starts. Job says, "As God lives, who has taken away my right." John, that sounds risky. He's swearing an oath by a God he thinks is being unfair to him.
It's high stakes. In the ancient world, an oath was like a verified blue check mark on your words. You didn't swear as God lives unless you were 100% sure of your integrity. Job is saying, I don't care how many guilt trips you guys lay on me. I'm not going to lie and say I sinned just to make your theology look good. He refuses to put away his integrity until the day he dies.
This word integrity, it's not just about being a nice person, right?
Exactly. In plain English, it's having a moral skill for living. It's a backbone. Job's friends are using a two-ways theology. Good people get cookies, bad people get coal. And since Job is suffering, they insist he must be a bad person. But Job is holding fast to his righteousness. He's basically saying, my heart doesn't reproach me for any of my days.
But then he says something that sounds, well, kind of mean. May my enemy be as the wicked. Is he cursing his friends there?
He's definitely not sending them a thinking of you card. This is a legal move. He's saying, if you want to label me as wicked, then you are positioning yourself as my adversary in court. And if the wicked truly get the destruction you've been describing for 20 chapters, then you better be careful what you wish for, because you might be the one standing in that spot. It's the ultimate Uno reverse card.
It's such a lonely place for him to be. He's caught between a God who feels distant and friends who feel like enemies. He's in that messy middle of faith where you still believe God is powerful, but you have so many questions about why things are happening.
And that is the most relatable part of this whole book, Steph. Job hasn't walked away from God. He's wrestling with God. He's holding on to his moral skill, even when the data of his life doesn't make sense.
Well, speaking of data and mining for answers, we are going to take a quick break. But don't go anywhere, because when we come back, we are going into chapter 28, which is basically the ancient version of a Discovery Channel special on deep-sea mining and the search for a treasure that money literally can't buy.
Oh, we're going into the shafts. We'll be right back.
And we are back. I hope you all grabbed a fresh cup of coffee or finished that load of laundry, because we are about to go deep. And I mean literally deep. John, before the break, you mentioned that Job 28 is basically the Discovery Channel episode of the Old Testament.
It totally is. I mean, if you're a fan of those shows like Gold Rush or Deadliest Catch, you have to love this chapter. Job takes this massive, poetic sidestep from his argument with the friends. It's like a commercial break in the middle of a heavy drama where the narrator suddenly starts talking about the history of deep-sea mining.
It's so vivid. I was looking at the text while you were talking, and verses 1 through 4 describe this incredibly dangerous work. He talks about people cutting shafts away from where people live, and how they dangle and sway in places forgotten by the foot of man. Just picturing an ancient miner swinging on a rope in a dark hole. I'm getting vertigo just thinking about it.
Right? No OSHA inspectors back then, Steph. But here's the deal. Job is highlighting human ingenuity. He's saying that as humans, we are obsessed with finding treasure. We will tunnel through solid flint, we will dam up rivers to find gold at the bottom, and we will go to places that even the birds of prey, with their amazing eyesight, can't see. We have this incredible drive to put an end to the darkness to get what we want.
It really shows how much grit we have when there's a payday on the line. But then he asks the big question in verse 12. But where can wisdom be found? And where is the place of understanding?
Boom! That is the hook. We can find the silver, we can refine the gold, and we can smelt the copper. But we can't mine wisdom. And this is our modern mirror for today, everyone. We live in the information age. We are the champions of data mining. Think about it. We have built these massive server farms. We have trained AI models on billions of lines of text. And we have search algorithms that can find the answer to any trivia question in 0.2 seconds.
It's true. If I want to know the chemical composition of a sapphire, which Job actually mentions in verse 6, I can find it in a heartbeat on my phone.
Exactly. We have more data than any generation in human history. We are drowning in an ocean of information. But here is the plain English problem. Data is not wisdom. You can have a 160 IQ, 3 doctorates, and a verified social media profile, and still have absolutely no clue how to handle a broken heart, a terminal diagnosis, or a midlife crisis.
That is such a good point. Knowledge is knowing that something is true, but wisdom is knowing how to live in light of it. Job says wisdom isn't in the land of the living, and it's not at the bottom of the sea. Even destruction and death say they've only heard a rumor of it. It's like it's on a completely different frequency than the physical world.
Yes, and that's why we need to do a word study on the Hebrew word Job uses here, chokmah. Now, listeners, don't let the scholar talk scare you. Chokmah, spelled Chokmah, is one of the coolest words in the Bible. It doesn't mean theoretical philosophy. In the ancient world, chokmah was moral skill.
Moral skill? Like being good at being a human?
Precisely. The Bible uses this same word to describe sailors who can navigate a storm, or craftsmen like weavers and goldsmiths who are masters of their trade. So, when Job talks about wisdom, he's talking about the skill of living. It's the ability to see the world from God's viewpoint and make the right choices at the right time.
I love that. Because if it's a skill, it means it's something we can practice, but it also means we have to be apprenticed to a master. And Job tells us exactly who that master is in verse 23. God understands the way to it, and he knows its place.
He's the only one with the map, Steph. We try to Google our way through suffering, but God is the one who sees everything under the heavens. He's the one who established the force of the wind and measured out the waters. If he can manage the physics of a thunderstorm, he can probably manage the storm in your life too.
But then we get to the text message summary of the whole chapter, verse 28. Behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to turn away from evil is understanding. But John, we hear that phrase, fear of the Lord, all the time in church, and it honestly sounds a little, well, scary.
I'm so glad you brought that up. This is a major deeper dive correction. The Hebrew word for fear here is yirah, and in plain English, it does not mean being terrified that God is going to smite you for every mistake.
That's a relief. So what does it mean?
Think of the modern mirror of a high-voltage power line. Do you fear a power line? In a way, yes. You don't go poking it with a metal stick because you respect its power. You know that it can provide light and heat to a whole city, but if you treat it flippantly, it's dangerous. Yirah is reverential awe. It's standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon and feeling small, but also feeling amazing because you're seeing something so vast.
So, fear of the Lord is basically acknowledging that God is God, and I am, well, not. It's having a deep, profound respect for his authority.
You nailed it. And Job says that this posture, this humble, awe-filled respect, is the only way to find the wisdom that mining can't reach. It's not about how much data you have. It's about whose hand you're holding in the dark.
It really puts the friends' advice in perspective. They were trying to give Job data, but Job was looking for wisdom.
Exactly. The friends were doing a keyword search for Job's sins, but Job was mining for an intimate relationship with the Creator. And that leads us perfectly into chapter 29, where Job looks back at the good old days before the storm hit.
Oh, we're going into some serious historical nostalgia next. But first, let's take a breath. We'll be right back for segment 3 and our hidden gem of the day.
Don't touch that dial. We've got more deeper dive gold coming your way. And we are back from that quick stretch. If you were just joining the deeper dive community, you picked a heavy but beautiful time to jump in. We've covered the cosmic power of God in chapter 26 and that incredible mining for wisdom poem in 28. But now in chapter 29, the camera zooms in all the way into Job's heart. And man, it is personal.
It really is. I was just telling John during the break that chapter 29 feels like looking through an old photo album. You know that feeling when you find a picture of yourself from 10 years ago and you think, I was so happy then. What happened? That's Job. He starts with a literal wish. Oh, that I were as in months past, when the friendship of God was upon my tent.
It's the ultimate throwback Thursday, Steph. He's reminiscing about when his steps were washed with milk and the rock poured out streams of oil. Now, representing the listener here, Job isn't saying he was literally wading in dairy. That is ancient agricultural flexing. In plain English, it means he was so prosperous that abundance was just everywhere. He was living the dream.
But it wasn't just about the money, right? He mentions the friendship of God. That's the big question for me. Is Job mourning his bank account, or is he mourning his relationship with God?
It's both, but the relational part is the sting. He feels like God's lamp has been unplugged from his life. He remembers when he used to walk through the city gate. Now, here's the modern mirror. The city gate was the ancient version of a VIP lounge, a courtroom, and a LinkedIn Top Voice Award all rolled into one. When Job walked in, the young guys would move out of his way. They literally hid themselves. And the elders, the guys with the gray beards, would stand up in respect.
I'm just trying to imagine you walking into a room and everyone standing up.
Hey, I'd take it. But seriously, the nobles would put their hands on their mouths when he spoke. He was the thought leader of the town. Everyone wanted his take on everything. But then he tells us why they respected him. It wasn't just because he was the richest guy in Uz. Look at verse 12.
Right. He says, I delivered the poor who cried for help, and the fatherless who had none to help him. He was eyes to the blind and feet to the lame. John, he sounds like a one-man nonprofit organization.
Exactly. He was a champion for the marginalized. He didn't just have wealth, he had impact. And this is where the modern mirror hits home for our modern seekers. When you lose your job, or your health, or your platform, maybe your social media following drops or you get canceled, who are you then? Job is having an identity crisis because the job everyone knew at the gate is gone.
Is he being a bit, well, self-righteous here? He says his justice was like a robe and a turban. It feels a little like he's bragging about his resume.
It's a thin line. Some commentators say it's self-justification, which isn't always endearing. But in plain English, Job is making his final defense. He's saying, look, my friends are calling me a secret sinner, but the evidence of my life, the widows I helped, the orphans I fed, says otherwise. His integrity wasn't just a costume he put on, it was part of his skin.
It reminds me of what we talked about in chapter 28, that fear of the Lord is the foundation. Even in his grief, Job is looking back at a life that was built on yirah, that reverential awe. He did those good things because he respected God.
Yes, that's the hidden gem for today. Your value isn't your seat at the gate. Job's world was collapsed, as the Gen Z listeners might say. He was a guinea pig for a type of suffering he didn't understand. But he held on to the one thing he could, the fact that he was fashioned by God in the womb, just like the employees he treated with respect.
So what do we do when we are in our own chapter 29? When we are just missing the way things used to be?
We do what Job does. We lament. It's okay to look back and say, God, I missed the light on my head. But we don't stay there. We trust the designer of the depths from chapter 28. If God can hang the earth on nothing, he can hold your life together when your platform falls apart.
That is so encouraging, John. Thank you. And thank you to everyone listening. We know some of you are in a chapter 29 season right now, and we see you.
We really do. All right, here is your text message summary for today. When your status at the gate disappears, your integrity before the throne is what remains.
I'm going to put that in the group chat right now. Let's wrap this up with a prayer.
Let's do it. Father, thank you that you are the God of our prime and the God of our ash heap. When we look back with nostalgia, help us to look up with hope. Thank you that our worth isn't in what people say at the city gate, but in what you say over our lives. Give us the chokmah, the skill to live with integrity today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thanks for being part of the deeper dive today. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss tomorrow's episode. We're getting into the final oath, and things are about to get even more intense.
See you guys tomorrow.